So next we're going to bring on Britt Hermes. Britt Hermes is, of course, notable for being an ex-naturopath and now an anti-naturopath. I believe Britt's ready to go. Let's just go ahead and bring her on in. Probably half the guests come on and they hear me singing that song. They go, what the heck show did I get into? Oh, hello.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, you've got the most wild effect going on. Move your head around.
Look at that. Blurred in the background.
Oh, it's the background blur, and it's like that dry. Okay, cool. Wild.
I can unblur it.
No, that's fun. We like the groovy effect.
You like the groovy effect.
All right, so where in the world are you right now?
It's not that early, but it is morning here in Kiel, Germany. It is very dark out. The house is very sleepy, and I'm sorry, you're going to have to excuse my cold. I have a bit of a scratchy voice going on.
Oh, well, I'm sorry for your scratchy voice, since I've been sitting here talking for 8.5 hours already.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I'm just teasing. So anyway, thank you for coming on. It's really nice to have you. I mean, you've been on like every other skeptical show except Skeptoid, but of course the main reason is Skeptoid doesn't have guests. So,
right.
Except once every 13 years we make an exception for all our special friends.
Yes, that's nice. Thank you.
So I think the last time I saw you, actually the last time I saw you anywhere was on Z-Dog.
Yeah, okay.
That guy's a entertaining character. And then before...
Yeah, he's full of energy. I wish I had a quarter of his energy.
Yeah, he's one of those people that's just like, there's something wrong, there's like some brain chemistry issue going on. He just never slows down.
Yeah, he's one of those people that makes me feel like I'm not doing nearly enough with my life because he's just the Energizer Bunny, it seems.
Yeah, you see, I look at that the other way around. I think, wow, this is great. I'm taking it easy, much easier than other people are, so that's good. I'm living my life.
Yeah, well, I hope to get to your perspective anytime soon where I can feel like I don't need to be doing everything.
So anyway, the reason we're having you on is, of course, what you're best known for, which is being an ex-naturopath and now, I guess, arguably an anti-naturopath, a pro-medicopath. That's not a word.
You can make it a word. It's a word now.
I hope I'm not getting to that punchy time of the night where I start getting silly. So anyway, do you want to, for the benefit of those viewers of ours who might not know your story, do you want to give us the short version really quick?
Sure. The short version is that I attended one of those so-called accredited naturopathic schools in the U.S. I then went on to be a practicing naturopath in the U.S., first in the Seattle area and then in Arizona. I practiced for 3 years in a naturopathic-specific practice, and I left my practice of naturopathy after discovering that my boss in Arizona was importing and administering a substance for the treatment of cancer that was not approved by the FDA. And it turns out that this substance could be quite dangerous. It's been linked to some pretty serious side effects. And additionally, the importation and the administration of a non-FDA approved substance like this one that he was using could be an illegal crime in the context of treating patients. So this immediately led to me leaving the practice, but then it sort of more general led to me having kind of a crisis of conscience and put me in a mind space where I was willing to start to look at naturopathy critically. And so I began to seek out sources that I knew existed but willfully ignored previously that I knew were pretty critical of naturopathy. So, for example, I turned to science-based medicine. I found a book called Trick or Treatment, Alternative Medicine on Trial by Simon Singh and Dr. Edward Ernst, and sort of made my way through this information that was aplenty and came to the conclusion that the practice of naturopathy was unethical and that I didn't want to be a part of this profession. So that was one piece of it, and I could have left it there, but then I decided to make my journey public, and I began to blog at naturopathicdiaries.com and sort of laid out my story and sort of a public argument about why I thought naturopaths were dangerous and why I feel like the naturopathic school and the naturopathic profession as a whole is misleading the public.
The thing that I've always found fascinating about your story is that it's so uncommon for people to seek out contradicting information, for people to actually go out of their way and do the exact opposite of what human nature compels most of us to do, which is to seek out confirming information. And the fact that you did that and eventually actually came to a crisis point where you changed your mind, I think it's so rare. Now, there's a lot of stories like that, but almost all of those, if you look into them, the person was never really in that first space to begin with. I think yours is one of the exceptional stories. What was your frame of mind before you went into the naturopathy school? What was your understanding of medical science and everything, and what might have colored it?
Right. So that's interesting because I think a lot of things went wrong during this time period that really influenced my decision to go into naturopathy, and then really continued to keep me there. So I was diagnosed with psoriasis as a teenager, which is just an inflammatory skin condition that is typically not very serious but ugly. And the skin condition led me to going to a dermatologist. The dermatologist was a bit of a jerk to me, to put it, succinctly. Uh-huh. I remember being in the office with him and sort of asking him, why me? Basically, woe is me? Why do I have this skin condition? I live in LA. I want to wear shorts and t-shirts. Why am I suffering from this? And is there anything that I can do besides use the steroid cream to not have psoriasis come back? Or, I just wanted to engage in a conversation with him basically about my body and physiology. And it could have been an awesome time to teach me about the immune system, for example, or even genetics, because my mom also has the disease. But instead, this doctor was old and probably cranky and in a hurry, it seems. And I remember him telling me that I just needed to take the steroids and move on. And so this first sort of really pivotal health experience in my life taught me that what I wanted and my emotions and what I needed from a physician wasn't available to me in a conventional medical setting. And this eventually led to me looking for alternative therapies on my own, which I began to just experiment with and use in conjunction with conventional care. So over time, my psoriasis did get better, but I had this misconception that it was all of this extra stuff that I was doing on top of the conventional care that was the reason for the improvement in my skin. And then I began to sort of structure my life in a very specific way to have information that reinforced my belief system. So I hung out with people who believed that food is medicine, for example, and I sought out therapists and skin care people and anyone in my life that you could think of as sort of in a professional setting that would help reinforce this idea that I didn't have to use conventional medicine. So going into naturopathic school, I really strongly believed that medicine didn't hold all of the answers, first of all, that physicians weren't trained to be empathetic and had terrible bedside manner, right. And they were trained only according to this false idea that doctors only treat symptoms and they don't treat people. So this was a really big theme in my head going in. And I actually knew very little about alternative medicine. So I thought alternative medicine was just taking some supplements and making some lifestyle changes. I actually didn't know anything about homeopathy, for example. I didn't know anything about these different water therapies and nature cure and iridology. So all of that was new to me. And I was really, in a headspace where I was super open-minded about it. And so walking into this Bastyr University, this naturopathic school context where I am basically a sponge, and then, there's a Bastyr teacher there telling me that homeopathy is science-based, and look at all of the studies that's showing this, and conventional medicine is stupid. I'm like, yeah, great, I'm totally on board. And, so the critical thinking part of me just totally shut down at that part.
Interesting. So when you were there, you weren't necessarily aware that medical science rejects all of these concepts. Typically when I'll have a conversation with someone who is still in that space, who's still going for alternative, I feel terrible. You seem so sick.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm cool. I don't know why I've been taking all of my herbs. I don't know.
Clearly. When I often have this conversation, and I'll say, with someone who supports some perspective that's thoroughly disproven, whatever that might be, it doesn't even need to be in medicine. And I'll ask him that question. I often phrase the question as, obviously you're aware that most scientists disagree with your position. How do you account for that? And the answer is almost always, well, scientists are paid and their grant money is threatened. It's the conspiracy theory thing. But you weren't at that point where you simply weren't aware that what Bastyr University was teaching you was out of line with medical science.
That's right. So I was not a conspiracy theorist. However, I came to find out that a lot of people at Bastyr were conspiracy theorists. So I was definitely friends with a kid, for example, that believed 9/11 was an inside job, and so many people who thought chemtrails, were the government poisoning us, et cetera, et cetera. But that wasn't me. I think the newer generation of students pursuing naturopathic care are people who were like me, who are just generally sort of misinformed or not informed. For whatever reasons, we have these pivotal experiences with medicine, but also with science and math and sort of like the STEM field in general, where we being, former me, sort of checked out of those fields and shut down. And naturopathy presents itself as this very appealing, emotionally appealing, and also straightforward solution for very difficult problems. So yes, I did have these experiences with medicine where I felt like doctors were jerks and, they don't know everything. But I also had checked out of science and math in general. So I did really poorly in high school math and, went out of my way to not have to take anything after geometry. And in college only took remedial, math and science classes as needed. And then it wasn't until I wanted to go into naturopathic school that I started to engage in math and science again, which is interesting, actually, now that I'm sort of talking about this and working this out with you for the first time. So I'm realizing that, when I actually stepped back into science, it was within the context of doing so for a specific purpose related to naturopathy. So again, the whole world view was sort of tilted. And there was a means to an end of just get through this chemistry class because then I can get to Bastyr and take their version of organic chemistry. So I took organic chemistry, but I took it at Bastyr University. So it was a super watered down version of what a real medical student would take. Yeah, I think that is interesting actually to kind of to think about and think back on now. I could have definitely benefited from critical thinking courses for sure, and a setting of learning math and science where I was told it was okay to not understand something, and if I don't get it the first time around, I'm not stupid, and that actually the majority of people don't use geometry in their daily life, so if I don't understand certain concepts right off the bat, it's okay, but I'm not going to be a failing adult. I think I could have really benefited from a curriculum that supported that development of me much more.
Interesting. When you were talking about your experience going to the dermatologist the first time, I mean, you mentioned a couple of things that just popped with me because I hear them so often. One of them was, doctors don't have enough time for me, therefore alternative medicine works. Just kind of, but that wasn't you. You weren't quite there, You were the other one was, we don't have a miracle solution for your problem. Therefore, therefore this doctor is not a very good doctor, or this doctor's branch of medicine doesn't see everything.
Right.
So, now a lot of people can do that, and especially if you're someone who's in has a terminal condition or something like that. If your doctor says, "Gee, I'm sorry, we don't know how to cure this," it's very understandable for anyone to go say, "Well, I'm going to go try frickin' anything." But that's not really what drove you away either, is it? The lack of a miracle cure. Therefore, you went in search of something that was simple and easy and.
Yeah, I think so. At the forefront of my mind wasn't necessarily a miracle cure hunt, but it was wanting to feel like I had control over my health.
Okay.
So my mom's psoriasis was and has been and is really bad, and she has to manage it with pretty strong immunosuppressants and suffers side effects from being on long-term immunosuppressants. And so I had this vision of my future that looked not so great to me, that looked like having to store injections of immunosuppressants in the refrigerator and injecting myself with this medication as needed and having this affect my ability to do things in life.
Sure, yeah, that's very scary. Yeah.
It was concerning. And it was also this, I was also being defiant, I guess. So the dermatologist was basically like, you're going to be on steroids and immunosuppressants for your entire life. And it was sort of like, well, I'll show you. Actually, you don't know everything. And I'm going, stubborn teenager. I don't need to see you ever again, and I'm going to go show you otherwise. And so I really had this sense of like, wanting to be, I guess, like a health pioneer and wanting to prove the doctor wrong.
Fascinating. Which is it's an admirable goal. It's probably the kind of thing that's fairly common in a lot of young people.
I think so.
That was also what's her name? Elizabeth Theranos. What was her name?
Right.
Yeah, that was her thing. She a teenager at Stanford, and she thinks, hey, the rest of the world hasn't come up with this miraculous thing. I'm just going to go create it. How hard can it be?
The time aspect is immensely important, and Z-Dog touched on this in my interview with him, and I see a lot of his social media that focuses around this, and I think it's really, really key, especially for this new generation of physicians coming up. So my mom was just diagnosed with cancer, and she's fine. She has breast cancer, and her prognosis looks awesome. And she has an awesome medical treatment team with physicians who trained at premier schools and did awesome residencies and just incredibly qualified. And we're so lucky. She's so lucky. But the one thing that she always comes back to when she's telling me about her visits and her care is how much time the doctor spent with her.
Yeah.
That piece of information comes first. Oh, Dr. So-and-so spent so much time with me. She really went over and explained the tumor markers to me. They really explained, what this genetic mutation means, et cetera, et cetera. And this aspect of care seems to trump most everything. If the patient feels like that doctor has time for them, then that patient is on board, no matter what information follows, whether or not the prognosis is good or bad, or the treatment protocol is going to be arduous or not. If that patient feels like the physician, sat there with them and listened to them, so the patient feels heard and the concerns were voiced and all of that information, is provided to the patient so they feel safe, then the patient really seems to be on board with whatever care that follows. But as soon as that doctor visit is rushed and the patient feels like they aren't getting what they need emotionally, then that patient is going to be searching for something else.
Did the naturopathic school emphasize the need to spend a lot of time with patients?
Certainly.
For that reason?
The entire business model focused on time spent with the patient. So in medicine, you can bill based on the complexity of the visit. So you can tell insurance, okay, so this patient has this many diseases and they fall into this category of complexity, and the more complex and medically complicated the visit is, the higher the billing rate. So that's one way to bill, and that's how most, I think that's how most medical doctors bill. But you can also bill based on how much time you spend with the patient. So a lot of the care that naturopaths provide is really low complexity care. So it revolves around like dietary nutrition and some exercises, or taking this magic herb. So it's sort of like a low medical complexity visit. But if the naturopath spends 45 minutes with the patient, the naturopath can then bill based on, I think, maybe 15-minute time increments. So you can bill for your time and increase how much the insurance company will reimburse you, or how much the patient owes you for that visit based on how much time you spend with the patient. So there's a ton of counseling in school, or a ton of like teaching in school around why this is a good business model for naturopaths. And then that's also coupled with the fact that we learn that this is how you gain patient trust and patient respect, and really like an important following with your patient base is to be available no matter what. And so it's really common that naturopaths will spend at least an hour with a patient, even for something simple like a cold, for example.
The doctor won't spend an hour with your cold. He'll say, "There's nothing I can do for you. Get out of here." It's fascinating. If I was in the marketing department of naturopathy world headquarters, I would observe that a lot of people come to naturopathy because they were frustrated with the poor bedside manner of doctors not spending enough time with them, and emphasize that purely from the perspective of, this is a great way to retain our customers. Just give them a lot of time, period, and you've got them retained. I mean, even outside of the billing issue.
Yeah. So I took a business course that, I think I took it in Oregon, actually, now that I think about it. I took a business course that was an elective, so it counted for credits, but it didn't take place at Bastyr University. And this business course was a 4-part sort of intensive class that taught naturopaths essentially how to make money to pay back our massive student loan debt through this intricate marketing plan. And so this involved learning things like how to dress, which sounds really silly, but a lot of naturopaths are pretty earthy. And so they reviewed things like, don't have your dreadlocks, falling and touching the patient. You should pull your dreadlocks back. But it also went over other things like wearing a white coat and wearing a stethoscope around your neck to present yourself as a physician, and sort of providing that impression off the bat that you are an expert. It went over things like how much time to spend with the patient and how to bill based on time, so that you can maximize your income, how to stock your own supplement dispensary in your office and make money off of selling the therapies that you recommend. And it also talked about sort of this annual health plan that you could frame, as building the patient's health. And so creating a health plan for the patient that required them to see you once a month, and then perhaps once every 3 months, and then perhaps once every 6 months, to sort of maintain their health, where you went through different lab tests, for example, and analyzed different, naturopathic-y analyses like stool tests and blood tests and whatnot, and then updated their supplement regimen as needed. So this is totally like marketing scam 101, like, how to keep your patients coming back every so often and selling them things that they don't need, under this idea that that you can't be healthy unless you're adding all of this supplemental stuff to your lifestyle. And it turns out only a naturopath can guide you as to what supplement stuff patient X needs to have in their life. So a lot of students took it. It's a super popular business class, and you could potentially make a lot of money if you followed their plan, because you basically would hook patients and keep them coming to your office, eternally, forever, because the patient could never be optimally healthy unless you were in their life.
And of course, that's key to chiropractic too. I mean, I've never heard a patient who goes to a chiropractor who hasn't been told that they need to come back every week for 50 weeks or 200 weeks or for, the rest of their life. Fascinating. Exactly. I always wondered why, but Bastyr and most naturopathic universities, I'm not trying to single anyone out, they're basically 4-year colleges, aren't they? In many cases?
For sure. Yeah.
Why?
Why?
I mean, it seems that there is so much less. It's now me not being, and I haven't been a student, not studied it, so I don't know. I just have a skeptic's sort of cynical view of it. It seems that there's so much less that you have to know as a naturopath than you would as a doctor. So why does it take 4 years?
I think it's a business model. So where do I start with this? I mean, so there's a handful of accredited naturopathic schools in North America. I think there were 7 when I went to school. There might be 8 now. I actually have to double check that. And these schools that are accredited qualify for financial aid from the government, or at least in the U.S.
Gosh.
This means that a student who goes to an accredited naturopathic school can borrow federal student loans in order to pay for the school. And these accredited schools cost like $45,000 a year.
Right.
And in order to become accredited, they had to structure a program that essentially would make it look like it was a real, sort of medical science-y based curriculum. And part of the strategy is to emulate medical school in a way that will then convince lawmakers and the public that anyone going to a naturopathic school received a real sort of science-based education, which then has professional downstream benefits for the naturopathic profession if they can pull that off, which includes getting licensed as a physician, being allowed to bill insurance, and sort of allowing naturopaths to integrate themselves into the healthcare system as a distinct medical specialty. So some naturopaths want to integrate into conventional medicine, sort of like the osteopaths did way back when.
Right.
But then there's another, subset of naturopaths who want the profession to stay its own distinct entity. Either way, most naturopaths want to have the legitimacy of being viewed as a real physician, because the student loan debt is so massive that in order to pay back loans and make a living and pay for a house and raise kids, they have to be able to bill for their services at a level that is commensurate with what a physician would bill at. And so it becomes sort of this professional lobbying strategy. So I think the whole accreditation 4-year thing sort of grew out of this desire to grow the profession.
Sure, yeah, that makes perfect sense.
And advance the profession in this specific way.
Well, we're basically out of time here, so I think I'm going to prescribe to you bed and chicken soup.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. The time went much faster than I was prepared for, because I feel we just got started. But
yeah.
Well, anyway, we'll have a chance to talk more at you're going to SciCon, aren't you?
Yeah, definitely.
I thought that you were going to be there. Yeah, cool. Well, thank you again for your time, and it's a wonderful story, and we're so glad that you made the U-turn that you did and are now have joined the forces of good.
Thank you, Brian. It was so fun, and happy birthday and congratulations.
Oh, thank you very much. All right. Good night.
All right, see you soon.